Yeah, so my name's Angie Pimetto. I'm the director for the Office of Young Adult and Campus Ministry. We're here today at the St. Dominic Chancery with Bishop Italo for our day of reflection after World Youth Day. And I just think, God is alive and He's at work in our hearts. And I just think one of the things that I encounter a lot with young adults is that sometimes we don't know He's working because we haven't taken the time to stop and reflect, right? So I just think it's so important to have a day like this after this amazing event that was World Youth Day, to take a time and just stop and reflect, and so we can remember what did God do in our lives during that trip, and so we don't lose that, but we're able then to take that and go forward into our lives back here in Houston. I think today is structured, we had a morning reflection with Bishop, we'll have an afternoon session with Bishop. The morning really was just reflecting on our memory, like what happened, what do we want to remember, how did the Lord work in our lives? And I think these young adults, all of them, were touched by the Lord, or they had an encounter with Christ during World Youth Day. And it was really powerful. So for them to recall that and to be able to share it with others and not forget that, that's the first step. But I think this afternoon session here, the hope is to also then call them forward.
When thinking about World Youth Day is my encounter with God, particularly right after receiving the Holy Eucharist at the closing Mass with Pope Francis, with being surrounded by hundreds of thousands of pilgrims from all over the world, just feeling the energy of everybody excited, not only to be there for World Youth Day, but also to be in the presence of the Holy Father. I was just so grateful to God for everything that He graced me with, those blessings that He had, that I received from that day. And I just broke down in tears after receiving the Holy Eucharist. And normally, I'm a person that does not wear their heart on their sleeves. So for me to just be touched by the blessing and the grace that God granted me that day, I was just moved to tears. And so that will stay with me forever.
One thing that I miss the most from it is just being able to pray openly with anybody, and even if the prayer is in different languages. And I think that's something that I miss and I treasure the most. But I think while there's a lot of moments that really touched me, I think one moment in particular was I actually got to celebrate my birthday in World Youth Day in Lisbon. And I remember that we had daily Mass, and it worked out that I was able to go to Mass one morning. And I remember I just received communion, and I just started crying, and I realized that was the first time I'd ever been to Mass on my birthday, if my birthday wasn't on a Sunday. And I just remember tears, pouring down my face, and thanking God, and saying, why have I never celebrated my birthday at Mass before? And just being able to be there at World Youth Day on my birthday. Bishop Italo was there as well, and so that was such a special treat. But just thanking God for another year of life and thanking Him for all the great blessings that had happened the year prior. I think that was one moment that I'll never forget from that.
Something that I still remember weeks later, where I went into the chapel at Fatima after about 45 minutes of trying to get through the line. And it was well worth it, because when we got into the chapel, some of the rest of our group were praying a rosary together. And I joined in with a rosary that I brought that friends of mine gave me years ago that was blessed by Pope Benedict, and then thought, you know what? I bought this other rosary here in Fatima, and it was blessed during the Mass. I should pray with that one in Fatima. And then I was joining the rosary on the 4th decade, and in just a few of the beads, I just started to freeze up, because the experience of being close to God was just that intense, and I could feel a blessing from God and from the presence of Our Lady in that moment. And I remembered seeing images of the miracle of the sun in the movie Fatima. It's like that flashed into my mind for a few seconds, and it was so vivid that it was like I was actually there. And I had a very difficult time staying composed for a lot of the rest of the afternoon, because that was not something that had happened to me for a long time in that way. And once I got to Fatima, I really felt deeply in touch with God in a way that I was really praying for, since I was coming into World Youth Day not really sure what my relationship with God was or what I believed about Him. And starting from then on, I was totally in.
If World Youth Day is just an event that we went to and we can check it off the list, then I don't know if we really fully entered into it. World Youth Day is a type of event that should change us, should transform us, should push us onto mission. So the idea of what is the Lord calling us to do now after having experienced this amazing blessing that was this World Youth Day event.